Hi, guys. Welcome to Purple Angles. I'm Stephanie,
And I'm Natalie,
where we bring back healthy conversations.
and the beauty of divergent opinions. In today's podcast, we're going to cover emotions. As you know, mental health is related to a lot of different causes, to a lot of different perspectives. And one of them is emotions and how you feel within your heart. And in today's podcast, we're going to cover anger. What is anger? How should we feel it? How is it described? And how can we help that specific emotion? What is anger?
Go ahead. Let us know.
I'm going to give the exact description that's in the dictionary. So forgive me if I'm reading this one. But anger is described as an emotion that is often characterized by intense feelings of displeasure and often impulsive outbursts of rage and hostility. What do you think of that, Steph?
Anger is often perceived as something negative by society and is often almost pushed to be repressed. However, in my experience, and I'd love to hear your experience after, in my experience, anger was a positive when I used it properly. Actually, when I expressed it properly, it led to positive impacts and positive changes within my life. So I'll give you an example. I was angry at the fact of not having other options for healing or for finding ways to feel better in my mental states. I was offered the typical pharmaceutical drugs, and I was mad because I came from that world and I wanted other options. So this madness, if you want, or this anger was used, and I used it, I transmuted it, I changed it for energy where I was looking for other options and doing research and finding solutions to heal myself. So anger could be perceived as something negative, but it could be a powerful tool too. And I'd love to hear your story or how anger, have you ever experienced? I think everyone has experienced anger and knows what it is to a certain extent. But tell me a bit more about your experience or how you used anger in a different way.
So for me, it's a little bit different. I didn't grow up in a very, let's say, angry environment or violent environment or hostile environment. Was pretty peaceful in the environment I grew up in, which is something I'm extremely grateful about. The way I've experienced anger in my life has always been more towards myself. And it's not something that I necessarily express to other people. Yes, there are moments, of course, we all get angry, we all get mad, there's things that bother us. But that intense feeling of anger, I would say, was something that I always brought back towards myself and was more intrinsic to who I was as a person. I've had experiences in my life where I've repeated the same mistakes, and I thought that I've learned the first time. And a few years in, you go back, and life teaches you a lesson, maybe even stronger than the first time. And then I got really angry at myself because I kind of let myself go, and I didn't listen to who I truly was inside of myself. And that anger within me is what motivated me to kind of do a change. So I agree with you in the sense that I personally perceive it as something more negative, and I think most people see it this way because it has been associated with violence, with aggressivity, and we hear about anger management classes, and we hear about it's something that is definitely perceived as negative. But I do believe that there is a positive side to it if it is used properly.
This brings me to pinpoint on something. Anger is often perceived as a tantrum, violence, and you actually named a couple of those. So it's often seen as something so reactive, where it could be just feeling annoyed within and having that feeling of being annoyed, which could be a description of anger. So anger is very broad in terms of subjective definition, which leads me to explain also and to bring up other things, because as you know, I've been doing research, and there are other causes of anger, and there's ways to distinguish it in terms of either guidance or root causes, and understanding why are you feeling angry, why are you, it could be a guidance, but it could also mean that you probably are needing some nutrients, that there's something repressed within you that you're not expressing. There are other causes that could be the explanation of that feeling.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to also bring perspective to that. There are multiple causes to anger. I think the most common ones that we maybe feel comfortable about talking, or are being annoyed by someone, or being displeased by someone, by feeling like someone betrayed us, or those are usually the causes we see in our environment that might cause us to feel anger. But I'm happy you're sharing some of the discoveries you've done in your research, that causes can also be imbalances, can be nutritious imbalances within our body. And I would love for you to speak a little bit more about it. What kind of nutrition, let's say, deficiencies can be linked to anger?
Sure. So basic ones, and I just want to give a few examples because the list could be long. A deficiency in B vitamins, in zinc, or even protein deficiencies has been associated with anger and feelings of anger. So when one wants to understand, like, are they angry because of nutrients, or are they angry because something triggered them? Are they angry because they're repressing emotions? Because there are so many causes, and it could be difficult to actually pinpoint the real issue. What I would recommend is assess if there's a trigger. As you said, sometimes there's a reaction to something. Someone said something and then they feel angry. So then there's the cause or the correlation between the emotion and the reaction is more direct, rather than sometimes you wake up and you're angry, or you're feeling angry out of nowhere, you don't understand, or you also have uncontrollable outbursts and you're just angry all the time, and the way you react is not something you even recognize yourself in. That could be a link associated with some nutrient deficiencies and maybe some neurotransmitter imbalances caused by possible nutrient deficiencies as well, which makes it more difficult to manage that emotion, to articulate that emotion, to understand the core of the emotion. So again, looking at nutrition could help you understand how to manage it and how to find other solutions or to express it in different ways. I want
So
to, sorry, go ahead.
so I'm just thinking, I understand what you're saying, and I'm actually intrigued by that. That's not something I personally knew. I didn't know that nutrition deficiencies could explain or could relate to symptoms of anger. Or so I'm curious to know, how and when should I look into that? When should I be looking into, let's say, doing, a test to see if I have a deficiency in some type of vitamin or protein? Or when do you recommend to do that, or when do you suggest to do that? At what point?
At a point when you feel you're not understanding, so you understand that you're angry, you see it, you are either have been told that you are very angry for no specific reason, or that you look at yourself and you're like, I'm not recognizing myself, I'm angry all the time without specific reason, am I overreacting? And I was someone like this at a younger age, so I would outburst out of nowhere, and then I was super introvert, so there was a lack of communication. I wasn't able to communicate my feelings, but I also had some deficiencies that I wasn't aware of. So it's very hard to say, just look at one thing and that's the only way to go. I would mention to explore. So as I said, B vitamins, zinc, and protein deficiencies, you could definitely start by adding more protein to your diet, eating more during the day, protein shakes and stuff like that, and see how you feel, adding a B vitamin. And if you're seeing some changes within a couple of days or weeks, then probably that was it, and you'll see yourself changing, being more able to manage that. Does that mean that you will never feel anger ever again? Absolutely not. So it's more about understanding, and the way you manage it after is more controllable, more rational, rather than just explosive.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, yeah. So in the sense, so when it feels kind of out of our personality, something that's more punctual, that's more that's very different from who we are at the core, this is when you would suggest to maybe look into the nutrition deficiencies. Because
Oh,
I'm thinking a lot about the psychological aspect of that too, right? And I think there's a lot of traumas that can explain why people can be angry on a regular basis. It can be an emotion that not necessarily the anger emotion, but like emotions that were repressed, that were not treated, that were not looked into for a very long time, that could lead to anger, that could be explaining why you have anger in your daily life as well. So it is a very complex emotion. It is hard to pinpoint, and I think we don't want to be doing that, because we understand that it's way beyond just one factor or
right.
one cause. It's just I appreciate having the guidance of like when to look into each cause.
Mhm.
And I think it's important for us to share with everybody that yes, you do have to look at every single possible cause related to that anger, especially if it's making your life more more unhappy or more difficult, and you're not waking up and feeling your best. And but I appreciate you giving us a little bit of a guideline when it comes to when to look into it and what kind of products to maybe try. Or so you're referring to protein. When it comes to protein, do you suggest whey protein? Do you suggest bovine protein? Do you suggest vegan protein? Is it all proteins the same when it comes to that specific deficiency related to anger?
That's a very good question, very specific. I don't think we'll tap into this in this specific podcast because it's quite complex and it's related to which neurotransmitter may be deficient at that point, because many neurotransmitter imbalances can't lead to that emotion. So it's diving in. I would start with just basics for everyone. And if it's not manageable with that, like a salmon or chicken, you could start with food. It's a very good question. I'm trying to distinguish the difference. Now my brain is going to
No, and I know that's something that's more complex, and I'm sure we can do like an hour on this specifically, right? But I think the message is maybe put more protein into your food. It could be whether it's, meat, poultry, fish, any kind of protein for now works because you do have most amino acids in them. I think vegan protein might be a different conversation, and that's something we can keep for another conversation because we need to dig deeper into all the different amino acids that are related to each. So getting more protein in, you're talking about B complex.
Yep.
Okay, so B vitamins in general.
High in B vitamins, like beef would be a high B vitamin food also.
Okay, amazing. I know we've been talking a lot of, I know between us, we talk about a lot about beef liver. Is that something that's high in, I know it's high in protein and nutrition. It's high in complex.
It's a high in a bunch of things, and it's one of the nutritious foods, actually.
So beef liver is a go.
I want to bring the point to, like, the anger has also been associated with some health problems, which can make the link again, like circle back on the nutrient deficiencies, because as we know, a nutrient deficiency, a nutrient on its own could act on hundreds of places within the body. So knowing that there's a correlation, a possible correlation and link between nutrient deficiencies and health problems, and I'm going to name a few that came up, like high blood pressure, eczema, stroke, depression. The list is super long, and which leads us back to understanding that, okay, it can be repressed emotions, it can be this anger, but it can also be a nutrient deficiencies, which is impacting other metabolisms within the body that should be addressed as well.
Or the healthcare issues you're suggesting, that you're speaking about, that are not controlled, right? Right. If someone has a high blood pressure, then it might be something that could be related to that. Is diabetes one of them?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
The blood sugar also can impact your moods. We know it when we're like hangry. It's also like related to that. It's also related to neurotransmitters. So all of this makes us understand that there's a biochemical component, but as we know, biochemistry is linked with different emotions, which could lead to different changes within the body. So it's all connected, and looking only at one thing is not what we want, but it's having that balance on a biochemical standpoint will help someone address anger, address the emotion, understand why it was repressed, or express it in some way. Actually, how do you express your anger? Is there a way that you use to help you exteriorize or understand how you're feeling?
Some of the tools that I appreciate the most when it comes to emotions in general, and when it comes to expressing my emotions, and when it comes to understanding them better, I'm happy to share, is journaling. That's something I've taken I've been doing for many years now. I think people at first, when they hear about journaling, it seems a little bit, it's not something you want to try. It seems like it's going to be elaborate. I don't have time to do this. I don't know what to write. What should I start with? I think it's important to keep it simple and to see it more as an outlet. So just take like a random notebook. It could be a piece of paper. It doesn't matter. Use that. You can do 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever you feel comfortable with. I suggest personally, what has worked the best for me is to do it first thing in the morning, before looking at my phone, before starting, my day. First thing I do is I sit down, I do my meditation. That's another tool I'll definitely share. And I write down in my journal. And the first things that I write down in my journal are 3 things that I'm grateful for. And I sincerely believe that when you are in a grateful mindset, the negative that doesn't have a place.
Mhm.
Whether it's anger or any other negative emotions, it's hard to fit that into a gratefulness mindset. So writing 3 things you're grateful for, I think has been something that's been very positive for me. And then just writing things out. You don't have to have a logic to it. You don't have to have a plan of how you're going to be writing things. Just write whatever comes out of your mind. It could be what you dreamt of, what you're thinking at the moment, how you're feeling about something. It's an outlet that helps you kind of put your emotions on paper, and it takes that load off of your chest. It takes that load out of your heart, sorry. And then it's going to help you process those emotions better. It makes things a little bit more clear. Is it magical? Are you going to suddenly wake after this and be like, hey, I have an amazing day right now? Not necessarily, but it helps with how your day is going to go. And the other tool that I really enjoy doing, and I have been doing for a lot of years, is meditating. And meditating can also be a few minutes a day. Meditating can also be done in many ways. It doesn't have to be, sitting on a cushion and doing 20 minutes of meditating with like beautiful music around you. It could be 5 minutes sitting down on your chair. You can do it in bed. You can do it, yes, you can do it on a cushion on the floor or whatever feels comfortable to you. Praying is a sort of meditating. That's something I personally enjoy a lot, and I find it to be brings me peace as well. And meditating is just kind of taking time to clear your mind. Clear your mind, I think, is what we hear the most about meditating, but at the same time is being aware of what your thoughts are. And it's kind of just letting your thoughts go and seeing this as a just a thought, something that's going through your mind, and just noticing it and kind of focusing on your breathing. Just focusing on your breathing. Whenever you have a thought that comes in, just let it go. Focus on your breathing. And you can do it for 5 minutes. There's a lot of apps that can help with that. There's Calm, the app called Calm, that's very, very good for that. There's a French one which is called Petit Bambou, which I think is very, very good for our French speaking
Audience.
people. And the one that you're using, Steph, is the same one I use, but I can let you speak about that one.
The Headspace?
Yes.
That was the first one I've used. Now, when you meditate for a while, I think I personally don't use them anymore. I like to dive in and to explore different types of meditation. But Headspace definitely was something that helped me dive into meditation, guided meditation, understanding your thoughts, understanding that you don't need to repress them. So it takes away that need to repress something, which we often tend to do, or we were taught to do with anger or emotions. It just allows you and helps you see, which once you see, you could start exploring and diving more into.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a recommendation for whether it's a book or a podcast or a YouTube on anger that you think has helped you or that you think can help our listeners?
I've had a lot of anger, and I've been journaling for a while, but one book that really helped me shift the perspective and understand other people's anger and my own anger and perceive people with anger differently as well is a book called The Anger Trap: Free Yourself from the Frustrations That Sabotage Your Life by Les Carter. It's a psychologist. It's a very good book that helps you change your perspective about anger and about how you perceive it. Strongly recommended.
And how do you perceive anger right now?
For me, it's power. It's a tool. I understand that if I'm angry without understanding why, it's guidance and maybe telling me something about my body and telling me something about my environment. And otherwise, it's a powerful motivator for change. Because when you don't like something, you either get angry or you use that energy to change what you don't like. And that's
So a
what
negative emotion that is perceived, a negative perceived emotion can actually be a great motivator.
absolutely.
Thank you.
That closes the podcast.
Would love to hear your input on what anger means to you. How do you use it? How do you manage it? What are the tools that you would recommend? Please leave us a note. Help us understand better how you guys see that.
And don't forget to subscribe. See you at the next podcast.